Welcome. We are live. It's Blacklisted Radio. Sorry about that. Had to jiggle the wires here in the studio. We are back here in Round Rock, live broadcasting to you this 10th day of May 2015. My name is Doug Owen. I'm the senior editor of blacklistednews.com. You can join me on my website dedicated to this show. It's blacklistedradio.com. We have an interactive chat room there, and you can find some of the fine folks that listen to this show and the trolls that enjoy provocateuring people there. So always a lively debate. Some of it related to the show, some of it just banter. But that's always fun as well. So enjoy the accoutrements and exclusive content that you can find at blacklistedраdio.com, free of charge. And so much is happening in the world today. I live in a central area to the Jade Helm operation, so we may talk about that. I want to get your feedback. A lot of things are being said about Jade Helm, and we talked quite at length last week's episode, focused primarily on that, but we can definitely get your thoughts and your comments. Feel free to interact with the show. Multitude of ways to reach us. 800-313-9443 is the toll-free number to do that. You can call into the show. You can also text me, 512-222-3067. 24 hours a day. You can leave messages there as well. And, of course, on Twitter at BLN Radio. So some of the stories that we didn't get to last week, we had some great calls from old friends and new acquaintances. And, people, I think, are really starting to understand the cycles of rule by crisis government that we kind of have to deal with. And it's something that I think we all need to kind of embrace, because you have reactionary politics, you have extrajudicial government, really a tyrannical rule, because the laws don't matter. I mean, what we see on the books and what is legal and not legal and constitutional and unconstitutional, and even to the Supreme Court, regardless of whether or not you're allowed to film the police, the rule of law on the street is much different during a time of emergency. And that's what Jade Helm's all about. It's about taking over your local government, infiltrating the public domain. Now it's kind of surreal seeing articles from the Austin American-Statesman talking about, the human domain, which is, this is all military nomenclature and verbiage, and the idea that the military is engaging the U.S. population as the enemy should be concerning, regardless of whether or not, let's out some people. PersonalLiberty.com had a story about, yes, there are trains with shackles. This is the stuff we were talking about last week. Trains with shackles. Trains that are ready to take you off to martial law. So that's what we have to contend with, and that is what the establishment loves. They love having these kind of stories as, honeypots or false narratives to kind of point and laugh at. So regardless of whether or not these people really believe this or they're just really, really, really gullible, it's interesting to see people in the alternative media kind of in damage control. So anyway, it becomes more of the psyop and more of the same. Rule by crisis. Whenever people decide that they don't want to listen to the government, it's been happening more and more as of late, when people are able to congregate because of instant global communication. This is the response by the U.S. military. This is the response by the U.S. government to be able to engage the public in the human domain. So there is that. And believe you me, with the economy being transformed, I was watching some of these videos from DARPA over the weekend, and if you haven't seen, they always have this yearly DARPA Global Challenge. But just to see what private engineers and entrepreneurs are able to do with drone technology today, it's surreal. It really is. And with the automation that we are seeing just being created at this exponential rate the amount of jobs in the U.S. that are going to be either outsourced or just non-existent in 10 years is going to create a crisis in this country. It's going to require some kind of huge transformation. And if you're listening to this show, you probably understand that that is more government, bennies, and basically everyone living off of the collective, and rather than being productive, because there's not going to be a lot for people to do unless we live in a less globalized world. And I think that that's one of the interesting things that is coming out of all of this. People are starting to realize that neoliberal politics and globalization has failed us. This was something that was, NAFTA, GATT, all of these, now the Trans-Pacific Partnership, all of these agreements were promised as job creators, ways to build the economy, build security, build a new world order. And most of them have fallen pretty flat. One of the things that is apparent with globalization and this idea is that rather than taxing corporations or putting tariffs on countries or against countries and products that are made inhumanely or that basically are only competitive because of the lack of labor laws, the lack of human decency that you find going into these products, there's no way that, and this is something that, anybody could figure out. You don't have to be a genius or a micro or macroeconomic doctor to get. And that is when you have people that are competing with in two different worlds, where you have people that are living in pestilence and then you have people living in a blue-collar world. They can't compete. The only way to offset that, to create any kind of equilibrium and equality in the market, is to have tariffs. And people, oh my God, free marketeers will just, cringe when they hear me say these things. But, I don't know of any other grand way to make global competition fair unless you want to bring the livelihoods of Americans down to a third world status. If that's what you want, well, bravo, congratulations. We are well on our way to having a world where people are not necessarily needed. Really scary video. It's enlightening, and I think that it, if nothing else, it gives us pause and it gives us reason to have a great discussion. Let me see. The name of it is Humans Are Not Necessary. I'm saying this wrong. Humans need not apply. Yeah, that's it. Humans need not apply. It's a 12-minute video, and it basically talks about the transportation industry and how much that is a staple of the U.S. economy. Building homes and transportation, that accounts for more than 50% of jobs. Once the supply chains are completely automated, and they don't have to be, better than, or they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be better than human beings, which is pretty easy to do. If you're a trucker, a computer can, definitely do the job of getting vehicles up and down roads today, right now. I was watching a video just Friday of a guy sitting in his semi-truck reading a newspaper, playing on his laptop while the semi-truck is driving. And, that doesn't seem like a huge feat technologically, considering, that we live in the world of the iWatch, and all the other breads and circuses and tools that we have for us today at our disposal. I work in the tech world, and I tell you what, it is amazingly great to have a smartphone, which is a flashlight, which when I'm wiring boards or PLC logic controllers, and replacing components, it's really great to snap about 15 photos before you do any kind of rewiring. That way, was it the red wire? Was it the red blue? Was it the purple binder? Those kind of things. We would have to literally sit down and wrap labels around each and every wire. Okay, this is the SLC. This is the bus. This is the 5 volts negative, blah, blah, blah. So, to being able to do that on the fly without having, some other piece of equipment like a camera, whipping out a big camera out of a bag and just being able to do that, easily send those pictures to people, to, my boss, to customers. Look at this thing, it's blown up. That's why it's going to cost you this much money, is invaluable. It helps me do my job in a more efficient manner. But, at some point, there's going to be a robot that is going to be able to do Doug's job. There's always going to have to be somebody, I guess, to fix the said robot. And there's always going to be jobs. Not to bring total doom and gloom to the situation. But when it comes to making important decisions, people don't trust human beings. And I have 1,000 stories on the front page of blacklistednews.com. Actually, only 20, but you can scroll through and find 1,000 examples, case in points, as to why people are not always trustworthy. So, people used to laugh at, what's her face? Sarah Palin, because, she's a dingbat and she doesn't sound very witty. But one of the things that you can give her credit for is, some common sense approaches to, the death panels. People joked about, the death panels. Death panels, those things would never exist in a socialized medical tyranny. That wouldn't happen. And I saw this really interesting article that got scant mention. That's why we're going to talk about it. And we talked a few weeks ago about algorithms, Google, and how not only the creation of Google was a CIA venture capitalist funded information storing system, creation of a Skynet, but it was also about creating the Chinese social credit score, your social credit. And if you're listening to this show, you don't have a whole lot of social credit. I'm just going to tell you. Welcome to the room 101. You're in the asylum. Sorry, but you're going to find great company here. I saw this interesting article about welfare, and of course, the amount of people that are on welfare far exceeds 40 million. I don't know what the exact number is today. I don't think the government really knows what the exact number of people that are on the dole for government subsidies. And yet, rightfully, wrongfully, not to disparage anybody, because 40 to 60% of working adults are receiving some kind of subsidy. But I saw this, let's see, well, I just had it here. Let's see, we'll just look up welfare. Welfare, benefits, B-E-N-E. Aha, House passes. Yes, that's another bad article. But anyway, they're going to start using algorithms. Pissing me off. Algorithms to figure out algorithmic guilt. Here we go. I knew I'd find the right keyword. Algorithmic guilt, using secret algorithms to kick people off of welfare. Now, if you have to deal with some, government crony at the welfare office, probably not very fun. But you have a human that's making a determination. They're making this interpretation of you and whether or not you deserve benefits. And, it's a person that you're looking at, and there's some person that says, I decide yay or nay. And you have some kind of culpability because there's a human being that signs a piece of paper that says yes, no, whatever it may be. So you have, somebody there to at least talk to. But just like the traffic cameras that are not more than 100 yards from my house, you're no longer dealing with people in government. Now you're dealing with computers. So all of you people in government, just letting you know that you are going to, especially there at the welfare office, you are going to be outsourced just like all of those McDonald's employees, because people don't want cheap, mass-manufactured, crappy burgers unless they absolutely have to. Unless they absolutely have to eat these things. There's just no reason. Can you hear me at all? Their producer? I think he can now. I had to re-plug in that thing. There he is. Okay. Anyway, so you have somebody to talk to. You have somebody that's at least can make a human determination as to whether or not. So anyway, retching and beautifully argued essay by Virginia Eubanks describes the inevitable consequences of letting secret, unaccountable algorithms decide who is eligible for welfare. Welfare now, your kidney later, your kid's IQ score or Common Core social credit Facebook score, or maybe using Facebook and other information that you've put into the public realm and using that against you when getting a loan. Okay, so welfare is just one aspect, and that softballs this approach to it because everybody's, oh, get those damn welfare babies off of them, So it's real easy, but when it's your kidney, when you're 75 and somebody says, well, Grandpa, I don't know if you deserve a liver. You drank a lot. We got these Facebook posts. I mean, every weekend you were talking about tequila 30. So secret algorithms, we don't know. Private companies that have the ability to not only be immune from scrutiny, but operate with impunity. Now, thanks to the Department of Homeland Security, Gestapo, NSA, FBI, spying ring, and InfraGard, the government can now take information from companies like Facebook, Twitter, whoever it may be, and they can now give your information because they're concerned, because for whatever reason, to sell it, they can give that information to the government, and you cannot sue those companies for doing so. They give them indemnification. For all you kids out there that don't know what indemnification is, it's basically impunity. You're able to do this without any other violations of law or being able to be sued. So this is great for the government because it allows all of these huge big data collectors to be able to give your private information, not only to the government, but now that the government and the IRS are the ones dictating your whether or not you're in compliance with your medical coverage. Now you see Skynet. Now you see the behemoth, this evil Leviathan system that is being created for your discrimination, to screw you out of taxes and to screw you out of your health benefits when you come to the table and ask for them. So anyway, it's like the no-fly list model of governments, metasizing into schools, crime prevention, child benefits, welfare, and every other public arena. In December of 2007, Indiana resident Sheila Perdue received a notice in her mail that she must participate in a telephone interview in order to be able to be recertified. So, to get her, she needed to get some kind of, in the past, Perdue, who is deaf and suffers from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. We'll get to it on the other side. Anyway, she's being yanked off the system because, she doesn't know. Because it's a computer that's making this determination. And that is the cold, calculated way that the government looks at human beings. And this is going to persist. We'll take your phone calls on the other side and hear from you and get your thoughts. Much more coming your way. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, we will take your phone calls. 800-313-9443 is the toll-free number to join us. You can talk about the computers taking over, the automation of everything. And, there's some other parallels that I'd like to mention. First and foremost is the mandatory minimum sentences. People are talking a lot about race relations, and unfortunately, the drug war gets completely left out of the conversation. Although, people are commenting on it, but it's really the racist laws that have been put in place. Case in point would be charging people 3, 4, 5 times as seriously, or giving them sentences upwards of 100% harsher for crack cocaine over just regular powdered cocaine. Why? Because, kids in suburbia can do powdered cocaine, but it was being sold in the ghettos and by black people that they wanted to put in jail. So it worked out well. You start looking at the drug war itself, and it's based in racism. And when you look at the cultural divide, you're not going to find a lot of people that will tell you that the most segregated city in the U.S., Chicago. Yeah. The most racist place that you can find, Chicago, the home of Rahm Emanuel, the mayor extraordinaire, ballerina, and IDF soldier, as well as Barack Obama. So they're not going to talk about that. The mainstream media doesn't want to bring up those kind of things because it stops you from buying in wholeheartedly that it's the white police that want to kill the black people. And I'm sure there are probably a lot of people, don the badge that shouldn't, and there's no shortage of people that are looking for opportunities to extort others and find that the badge provides them impunity. It's a great way to shove people around and to ask them for money and put them in precarious positions on the side of the highway. If you're into that, if that's what you want to do, then you're going to find a lot of opportunity for you to benefit, and a lot of reasons why you might want to be a highway patrolman. Just saying, not that all highway patrolmen are bad people. It's just those are the kind of jobs that those people want for whatever reason. If you're a pedophile, it seems like being a school bus driver is a good thing. It's an opportunity waiting to happen. So anyway, not to diverge too much from the technocracy and the techno-fascism that we are experiencing today. This story was actually out of 2008. And, it's expensive. Drugs that this woman needed. And basically she said, well, why can't I get them? I thought I had this through the welfare eligibility system in Indiana. And they couldn't give her an honest answer because the algorithm, which now they're blaming it on, and how easy is that to shield yourself from any kind of responsibility? Well, ma'am, sorry. The computer says you don't get your Humira this month. Sorry, you need to get a job. You need to get a jobby job. That's the cold reality that we are seeing more and more of. And I think that, there's something to be said for computers being very good at looking at inputs and outputs, and that's why the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and all these other groups, they have valueless information that is really curtailed to corporate espionage and roughing up people in the name of creating budgets. And that's because when every person out there is on the terrorist watch list, it becomes completely useless. It serves no function. Garbage in, garbage out. Garland, Texas, you may have heard about the Mohammed drawing contest by this conservative operator, Geller, that was being guarded by the SWAT team. And it seems that every group out there, from Anonymous to the FBI to local police departments, all knew that it was going to be attacked by these crazy nutballs that the FBI had been watching for over 6 years. We'll talk about the fallacies and the thing that the government doesn't want to talk about on the other side. You are welcome to chime in. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. The EU has unveiled plans for a global investor court. Now, if you're screwed over by the bankers, probably not going to have a global court to go after all of those people in the EU that have stolen your money. But don't worry. This is one of the things that they're going to be using to sell to these corporations that are wondering if they should still be investing in globalization. Can we still do business in Latvia? How good is it to invest in a fracked gas well in the Ukraine with Joe Biden's brother? Should I be buying gold from Hillary Clinton's brother in Haiti? Is that a good deal? Or is there going to be a political assassination? That's why you have to go to Stratford. You have to get the inside track and figure out who's going to be assassinated. Big stuff happening. Not a lot of coverage. That's why we do this thing here. It's called Blacklisted Radio, and I appreciate you listening and those calling in. We have an old friend, Cy Girl, who is on the line. Say, it's good to hear you.
Of course, it's always good to hear you and Charlie McGrath. Gosh, it's hard to know what to talk about because there's so much happening. I mean, I'm here in the Baltimore area, so we got plenty of coverage for a few weeks there.
Mm-hmm.
What with the Freddie Gray.
Oh yeah, you were in the midst of it. How did the rest of how much different was it from what people were being fed by the mainstream media and actually what was happening there?
Well, I had to go up to Baltimore because I got friends that live up there. Maybe not right in the middle of the area of the area that Freddie Gray was picked up in is called Winchester Sandtown.
Okay.
And I've probably driven through it. I mean, it's West Baltimore. But I have friends that live not far, so I had to go into the city a couple days during the curfew period. I had to go up, to see some friends. I'm not going to stay away. And businesses were shut down. A lot of my friends up there, they work as waiters in restaurants. And what do you think the cities are? They're these small businesses,
right,
hanging on by their fingernails, little restaurants and bars and shops. Some of them might be franchises or chains, but it doesn't matter because it's always somebody holding on to a small business, right, in an area.
Sure.
And in the cities, it's different from out in the suburbs and in the country. You have these strip malls and so forth.
Oh yeah. Ugh.
But in the cities, things are close. There's a lot more involved. You understand the infrastructure is a lot older, for one thing.
Right.
You're more apt to have a plumbing and heating breakdown. In other words, to be a struggling small business person, to me, this is the real proletariat. This is the only proletariat in the Marxist sense that is left of industrial capitalism, and that's the struggling, sweating, hardworking entrepreneurs in business trying to make an independent go of it in shops and restaurants and whatever they're trying to do in the cities. In these very, very
the independent entrepreneur is a dying entity.
What do you think it means? Yeah, what do you think it means when the Mayor of Baltimore says 10 o'clock curfew every night for the next week, and also they shut down? Here is the real problem. So so I'm talking to my friend and saying, well, what's the best way to? Because usually I'm 20 minutes from his place, depending on the traffic and the time of day. It is a city after all,
right?
But I take a couple expressways into the city, and then I'm up a couple major thoroughfares. I can be there in a half hour. It's not like it's that big of a deal, But although you don't want to run into rush hour, because I'm on I-95 a little bit for a few miles. Everything is close together here, but as you move toward the city, I'm seeing, so he said, I was told that they actually blocked they created traffic chaos for one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because they shut down the side effects. We want to get into a discussion about unintended consequences.
Well, it's really interesting to just see how very.
Well, you want to say that this is in fact an intended consequence of a larger social engineering project.
Well, I don't know about that, but it shows you how very easy it is to just destroy an economy, and how you have this facade of wealth and prosperous people.
A lot of these businesses, small businesses, from my experience. Now, remember, I made my living working for some of the top predatory corporate. I don't want to. Well, yeah, I can say we're predatory and parasitic. Some of the Fortune 50 companies that compensated me well, and then I worked for a small mom and pop software shop for the last, I would say, 20 years of my career. I mean, but I have previously worked for large corporations like the telephone. Ma Bell was called at one point, and they busted it up. And the railroad, I expect to be getting a pension from the railroad shortly.
Yeah, my father-in-law worked on the railroad for a long time, and he gets a pension. Yeah. It's not a bad deal.
Families, those jobs were passed down. Now, so much of that has been automated that to speak meaningfully of an organized work,
Yeah, where the heck is there a human operator? I don't know.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's all pretty soon. Look, trucking. Imagine now. To me, Teamsters are sort of they're like the apotheosis of the American working class.
Right.
Most of them managed at one point. To be a Teamster meant even though you did long haul trucking, which is really rough on you, I think. over time, you manage to earn a decent middle-class style life for your family, and send your kids to college. I mean, that's all Jimmy Hoffa wanted for his Teamsters, was that his people would live in a nice neighborhood and send their kids to college.
That's why we don't know where he's buried.
Wow. Something you cut to the chase. I'm glad of that, because you're right. It is. It's a gangster, as we've been saying. They turn the world upside down. It's a kind of a gangster situation, but this is not unprecedented in our American experience.
No.
I mean, if I know we're not going to be getting, who's that? The one that does that stuff on PBS about baseball and the Civil War, where he completely contrives a phony.
Who, Charlie Rose? I don't know.
No, the photography guy, so-called photographic expert.
Oh, yeah, I'm not familiar, but I can imagine.
He did the Civil War, and then he did American baseball. I can't think of his name, but we'll get him to do that. The gangsterization of the total gangsterization of America. And people, they kind of want to mystify it, I think. They kind of want to, there's a lot of escapism out here where people don't want to face just how, because the thing is, when you see how mobbed up shit is, when you see how mobbed up it is, you start to look at things like neighborhood and community and family and business. You can go and see the gangsters running things. You can go to the courthouse and see how they run it.
Right.
And when you see it from that perspective, when you walk, and I've had to walk into a courthouse as the criminal, and I've seen how they're operating. And
you're like, I'm not the criminal. These people are. These are just like the Clintons.
Well, at a certain point, Americans are going to... There's a point of exhaustion. Now, we had this in the 20s and the 30s, didn't we? I mean, wasn't American society pretty heavily gangsterized in the 20s and the 30s? Prohibition.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we saw the violence of prohibition and what that does when you have things that are outside. Well, that was just the instead of government monopolizing on force and on violence, we saw, privatized violence and force.
Right. I agree. I think it's probably going to, in many places, it'll take that form where it'll be packaged like that. It'll be corporate, privatized. And
right.
I saw this in a way with the way Ron Paul. I wanted to see how he could constitutionally worm his way out of responsibility for 9/11, and he came up with this thing about letters of marque, which is to say he was going to fall back on a precedent that had been established early in the history of the American Republic, which was inherited from the British creation of what are called privateers. We call them pirates. But they had charters from the government of England to plunder foreign shipping, Spanish, French, Dutch shipping.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Right, and this is what Ron Paul was calling on, the issuance of what he called letters of marque, to contract out to private corporate interests our war with Al-Qaeda. I think he actually put it in those words. That is to say that and I don't know if he would call it a war on terror, but I called it outsourcing the war on terror or contracting the war on terror, wouldn't you? I don't know that he called it the war on terror.
Well, yeah. I mean, and you see that. I mean, Fortune 500 companies now have private security. You can't trust the police. So there's a tier to.
Is this a return? Is this a return to feudalism in a way? Is gangster life a return to?
Hey, look at Jamie Dimon's pinstripe suit. You tell me that guy's not a gangster.
Right. Americans have always had a romance with gangsters. Culturally, we admire and respect gangsters. Look,
they get things done. They don't have to go through all the red tape. They get things done. They're about their familia. They're about, good food, and, sometimes they shed a little blood. I think people like that straightforwardness.
What are you going to trade one set of gangsters for another?
There's always a set of gangsters. There's whether it's a judge in a robe or a guy with a Tommy gun and a zoot suit.
You follow the money. You follow the money, and It's about ownership and control. And the weird thing is, how far is a media and culture going to be able to go in getting people to accommodate themselves to, I mean, how much will people really put up with before you start, well, you're already starting to see people snap out a little bit, huh? I mean, you see, unless these are completely contrived, fabricated media narratives, I wonder about that a lot, or maybe they're just opportune moments. I mean, I really do think the poor Freddie Gray's neck and back were broken in a couple of places, but I don't know how it happened. He might have just been tossed around. They might have manacled him and let him roll around in the back of a steel cage van for an hour or so. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no excuse for, the violence, but when you look, you have to understand the whole dynamic there as well. When you have people that in a place where you have unarmed citizens, you have just massive amounts of violence on a daily basis. I mean, look at the death count in Chicago. I mean, it's hard for people like me to fathom that living here in, small town Texas. But, police officers that are expected to police those areas, I don't know how you do that. And asking them to do, that job and be able to do it effectively, whatever that means. And that's pretty subjective.
I see it as a race between RoboCop, which is the automation of policing, a race between that and the bankruptcy of the existing state top.
It's a great point. We talk about the racist, violent, policing that's going on in America. What's the solution? Problem, thesis, synthesis. It would be RoboCops. It's a nationalization of the police force and having the DOJ put their privatized taser cameras on all of their government subjects that are ruling over the people. I mean, that's kind of the that seems like it would be the logical end game for what's happening today. What ultimately becomes the resolution to this problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's the what the only thing that makes it, how do I put it? The only thing that makes it less likely is that it might still be cheaper to use human slaves. In other words, I bet the only thing that would predispose you, I often ponder this.
You human slaves, we've got a lot more of you people than we do robots, and we have to give them energy and electricity, and they need water to be cooled, so we'll just keep some of you human slaves. And there's a good point to that. I mean, the reason that almost everything in China is handmade, most people think it's automated. The reason it's handmade is because Chinese labor is a lot cheaper than robots.
Right. If exactly, and if you automate the human completely out of the process, see, then you get into the whole, what is the logical conclusion? And my contention is that you cannot. That the side effects are going to be you can't possibly successfully engineer this process. You can't, not the completion. It's going to start breaking down. It'll break down first because it's contra it's contra human nature. It runs contra nature. They cannot completely, I mean, you'll start having, well, just to give you an example. Now, they're claiming that this German air pilot crashed his plane into a mountain and he got suicidal or something,
Right.
But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, let me see this. What you got? Well, that's all you got. Come on. Did he leave a note? What do you mean? And I'm looking at it thinking, I've seen. I don't know about you, but I've worked on complex software projects, and I've seen how they can fail when you've got different vendors trying to be interoperable with each other. You understand that the project is typically broken up into pieces.
No, yeah. Especially with, those kind of deals, big deals like that. Everybody has a black box they're working with.
Right. Either it was Arthur Anderson or now I guess they're called Accenture, I call them. They might be doing the security and, and the network might be Raytheon. And I mean, you see these, and I've seen these things, and the software has bugs. And when you start automating,
oh, yeah. Once you have pilots flying airplanes that are completely automated, you're going to see some real problems when you don't have that human. When you're just taking a bunch of different sensors and trying to make a determination what the best course of action is that doesn't have any kind of, relevant experience or expertise. It's just, input, output. It's not going to be good. And I mean, you see that with some of these trains, these huge accidents that are happening. Every once in a while, it's a guy, not paying attention, but a lot of times it's just the train tracks don't, switch like they're supposed to. A switch breaks somewhere, and boom, you have a head-on collision.
I remember how the Ricky Gates case, way back in the 80s, in Reagan times, it was sort of that moment in time, that turning point in time, where the president came out and said, well, we've got to declare war on you. Because Ricky Gates was a conductor on one of the, I'm not sure, I think it was Amtrak. He was a conductor on there, and he wasn't minding his business. They had the alarm taped shut. The usual. Well,
yeah, that's pretty typical.
Yeah, it was an accident. And of course, they tested his blood, and they found not only had he been drinking, but there was marijuana in his bloodstream. So immediately from the White House, we're going to have a national campaign. Everybody's going to be tested.
Just say no. That's right. Hey, appreciate the call. It's great catching up. We'll have to do it again soon. I got to take a break, and then we're going to finish up and go into the last segment. Have a great week. Great to hear from you, Si. More in moments, folks. Final segment coming up. It's Blacklisted Radio.
Who is the girl wearing nothing but a smile and a towel in the picture on the billboard in the field near the big old highway?
All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Final segment here. And if you want to make a donation of $50 or more, and you tell them that you heard about it on Blacklisted Radio, if you're listening to the podcast in the future or listening right now, I will get with our producer and get your name and address and send you a t-shirt. I don't have any silver, sorry, but a t-shirt, a Blacklisted Radio t-shirt with the honey badger. It's operator class. Pretty nice t-shirts. I've got them in most sizes. Maybe an alternate if you have an odd size or something that's extreme. We do have a bunch of them, so do that and we'll shoot you out a shirt. So there you go. I don't have a lot to offer, but I have shirts. And, as John said, there are not a lot of great venues, outlets for, real political discourse. And there's not a lot of places where you can have open and honest discussions about these topics without corporate interest intervening. So, glad to hear about the new model and working the store. I think it's a lot easier because you can determine what it is and whether or not it has value to you rather than, it's commercial advertisers that don't always have your best interest at heart because, not that, people are, nefarious or bad. It's just that, you're trying to sell products. You're trying to, just like I'm doing right here, I'm trying to sell the idea of liberty and personal responsibility as a way forward rather than letting the Matrix and techno-fascist machines dictate whether or not your grandmother gets a blood transfusion. Those are the kind of things that, are from cheesy 80s dystopian films and not something that I want my son to live under. So, regardless, I appreciate the people out there that take the time to invest in this voice in outlets like RBN because if you're expecting some corporation to have your best interest at heart, good luck with that. All right, so we have been talking about globalization. We've talked about how with good friend and caller Cy Girl about this transformation of America into where we have to compete with automation and third world slaves. And people have asked for this. People that thought Al Gore was genuine and knew that NAFTA would be a great idea, that sold us on the North American Union in all of its different forms and fashions. The people that are selling you TPP are only looking out for their corporate sponsors. So we mentioned this. EU unveils plans for a global investor court. This comes out of the EU Observer. The EU's trade chief has unveiled plans to set up a global court, global government, global courts to decide on disputes between investors and governments in a bid to diffuse one of the main controversies in the ongoing EU-US trade talks. Now, see, this is the problem. Monsanto does international business. They do it inside the United States. They do it inside of Europe. And if they get, a local ban, they're losing profits, and they want to go to this global court and sue your government and take your tax dollars. This is their way forward. We're trying to stop it. Thank you so much for listening to the program. I'll be back next week. Until then, have a great week. And you can, of course, get a hold of me at blacklistedраdio.com. And, of course, on Twitter. The handle's BLN Radio. Till then, take care.
Thanks, man. Have a great week.
Hey, you too, Mike. See you.